The year is 2025. Donald Trump is back in the Oval Office. The world is still grappling with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Tensions are high. Then, an announcement sends shockwaves across the globe. Trump is scheduling a call with Vladimir Putin. This isn't just another diplomatic exchange, it's a high-stakes gamble with the fate of Ukraine, NATO, and global security hanging in the balance. The world is watching, holding its breath. The stakes couldn't be higher. Will this call be a step towards peace? Or will it further inflame an already volatile situation? The White House is framing the call as a key part of Trump's America First reboot. They argue that only through direct dialogue with Putin can the conflict in Ukraine be resolved. However, critics fear that Trump's history of personal diplomacy with Putin could lead to concessions that harm American interests. This call is a pivotal moment. It has the potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape. The world waits with bated breath for the outcome of this high-stakes conversation. Trump's history with Putin looms large over this call. Their past interactions, marked by controversy and accusations of Russian interference in the 2016 election, cast a long shadow. The infamous Helsinki press conference, where Trump appeared to side with Putin over his own intelligence agencies, is seared into the memory of many. Trump's critics see this call as a dangerous repeat of past mistakes. They fear that Trump, eager for a foreign policy win, might be susceptible to Putin's manipulation. They worry that Trump, in his desire for a deal, might make concessions that weaken Ukraine's position or undermine NATO's unity. The specter of Russian interference in American elections also hangs heavy. Concerns about potential backroom deals and secret agreements abound. The lack of transparency surrounding this call only fuels these anxieties. The weight of history is undeniable. Trump's previous interactions with Putin have left a residue of mistrust and suspicion. Or was this just media hype? Can he overcome this baggage and navigate this call with the necessary caution and strategic clarity? The world watches and waits. Trump and Putin enter this call with vastly different agendas. Trump, focused on ending the conflict in Ukraine, seeks a swift resolution, even if it means straining alliances or making concessions. He sees himself as the ultimate deal-maker, capable of cutting through diplomatic complexities to forge an agreement. Putin, on the other hand, plays a longer game. He aims for a permanent peace deal that advances Russia's strategic interests. This likely involves securing Ukrainian territorial concessions, maintaining control over the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and weakening NATO's presence in Eastern Europe. These conflicting objectives create a treacherous diplomatic minefield. Trump's desire for a quick win could clash with Putin's more expansive ambitions. The risk of miscalculation is high. Adding to the complexity is Ukrainian President Zelensky's unwavering stance. He insists on Ukraine's sovereignty and demands the return of all Russian-occupied territories. He has drawn clear red lines: no neutral status, no reduction in Ukraine's armed forces, and no recognition of occupied territories as Russian. The stage is set for a high-stakes diplomatic showdown. The outcome remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the future of Ukraine, and perhaps the world, hangs in the balance. As Trump and Putin speak, European leaders are on edge. The memory of Trump's previous criticisms of NATO and his perceived closeness to Putin have left deep scars. The fear of a sudden U.S. withdrawal from NATO, or a unilateral deal that undermines Ukrainian interests, is palpable. The European Union, already grappling with the economic and humanitarian fallout of the war, faces a potential leadership vacuum. Germany, under new leadership since Angela Merkel's departure, is hesitant to take on a more assertive role. France, preoccupied with its own domestic challenges, seems unwilling to fill the void. The UK, outside the EU but still a key NATO member, expresses cautious optimism but emphasizes the need for a just and lasting peace. However, their influence is limited, and their ability to shape the outcome of the Trump-Putin call is questionable. The uncertainty and anxiety are palpable. Europe, caught between a resurgent Russia and an unpredictable US, faces a defining moment. The Trump-Putin call could either reassure allies or deepen existing divisions. Section 5. A House Divided. Back in the US, the call is met with a predictable mix of reactions. Trump's base, drawn to his strongman persona and his America First rhetoric, applauds his willingness to engage with Putin directly. They see it as a sign of strength and a welcome departure from the perceived weakness of the previous administration. Democrats, on the other hand, express deep concern, bordering on outrage. They accuse Trump of appeasing a dictator and jeopardizing American national security interests. They point to Trump's history of praising Putin and his dismissal of Russian interference in U.S. elections as evidence of his flawed judgment. Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, threatens to subpoena any secret agreements made during the call. He accuses Trump of circumventing Congress and conducting a shadow foreign policy that undermines democratic norms. The domestic political fallout from the call is immediate and intense. It further deepens the partisan divide and adds to the sense of polarization that has gripped American politics for years. Section 6. Echoes of appeasement. The Trump-Putin call inevitably draws comparisons to the infamous 1938 Munich Agreement, where British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain attempted to appease Adolf Hitler, only to see his efforts end in failure. Critics argue that Trump, like Chamberlain, is making dangerous concessions to a dictator in a misguided attempt to achieve peace. They point to Putin's history of aggression, from the annexation of Crimea to the ongoing war in Ukraine, as evidence that he cannot be trusted. They argue that appeasement only emboldens dictators and makes future conflict more likely. Trump's supporters dismiss these comparisons as hysterical and out of touch. They argue that the geopolitical landscape is vastly different from the 1930s and that Putin is not Hitler. They believe that Trump, through direct engagement and tough negotiation, can achieve a peaceful resolution that benefits both the U.S. and Russia. The debate over appeasement highlights the deep ideological divide that surrounds this call. It reflects differing views on the nature of the Putin regime, the effectiveness of diplomacy, and the role of the U.S. in the world. Section 7. A world on edge. As news of the Trump-Putin call spreads, the world reacts with a mixture of apprehension and cautious hope. China, eager to see the U.S. distracted and weakened, praises the call as a step towards pragmatism and a multipolar world. Oil markets, anticipating potential U.S.-Russia energy deals, react with volatile swings. The price of oil, a key geopolitical commodity, becomes a barometer of global anxieties. International organizations like the United Nations express cautious optimism, but emphasize the need for a peaceful resolution that respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They call for a ceasefire and the resumption of dialogue. The world holds its breath, watching and waiting to see what, if any, concrete outcomes emerge from the Trump-Putin call. The stakes are high, and the potential consequences, both positive and negative, are far-reaching. Section 8. The long road ahead. The Trump-Putin call of 2025 is not an isolated event. It is a chapter in a much larger story. A story of great power rivalry, geopolitical shifts, and the search for a new world order. The call highlights the challenges of diplomacy in the 21st century, where the lines between peace and conflict are blurred, and the threat of nuclear war casts a long shadow. The road ahead is uncertain. Whether this call leads to a new era of diplomacy, or accelerates the world towards further instability, remains to be seen. One thing is clear: the future will be shaped by the choices that leaders make in the days, weeks, and years to come. The world is watching, the stakes are high, the time for wise leadership and clear-eyed diplomacy is now.